Hello and welcome to another edition of D&D Stories. I am your host Rob from the channel Performance Check, and this is the show where I regale you with tales from the hit role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes Pathfinder, in particular about the time when something cool happened. This is the 8th Gate, Part 2. So last time I was telling you about Valdane, my character, the Wandering Sorcerer, and how he was hunting down his rival, a rival sorcerer, Daxner, and trying to uncover the mystery of this 8th Gate, this story that has been spreading across the realm about this huge threat to the realm, linked with the 9 Circles of Hell. In Main Realm, there are 9 standing gates that are hidden across the land, and each of them has access to a certain layer of hell. The 8th is allegedly going to open. The 8th Circle of Hell is a pretty nasty one. I mean, all of them are pretty nasty, but that one's a particularly nasty one, and it has a particularly nasty leader, who we will discuss shortly. But essentially, Valdane had been hunting this 8th Gate, and after finally confronting his rival Daxner, he was surprised to learn that Daxner was actually quite forthcoming with the information as to the location of this terrifying gate. Daxner had stated that it would not benefit him in the slightest if this apocalyptic event were to occur. He might be a rival of Valdane's, and he might be basically skirting along the lines of evil, but he doesn't want to die. So he actually gave the information to Valdane, who learned that the gate is positioned beneath the fabled city of Attistel in Ireland, a city that we have visited a few times in D&D stories, at least my D&D stories in the past. The gate is beneath the city, and Valdane has to journey to Ireland to ensure that it does not open. On his way, he met Barnaby, who it transpires is a cousin to Theodrex of Hemlon, Matt's old character. Matt had done the tropey thing of basically bringing in a relative of a former character. Barnaby is a hexblade. We discussed how essentially hexblades are a little bit of a questionable choice in terms of the mechanics that they utilize. Basically, they're not very good. And from that moment, they basically united in a cause to travel south to stop this cataclysmic event from happening. And on arrival of the city, they learned something fairly horrifying. The Gothic architecture of Attistel makes every sound echo. For the city is silent, the city is deserted. All but deserted, bar an old man who had somehow remained where everyone else had disappeared. The old man desperately tells Valdane and Barnaby that the Scourge had arrived within Attistel, and it is they who are responsible for the city now being deserted. Essentially, Mike, who was DMing, decided it was time to cross over campaigns. For, as I explained at the end of the last video, occasionally we would play a casual campaign when Matt wasn't around and our other friend Dom was over. We'd play an evil campaign, and the moniker, the pseudonym of the 2 characters that myself and Dom played was the Scourge. My character in the Scourge was Eviscerus, the Duskblade, and Dom's character was Israfil, the Blackguard, an evil paladin. And essentially this was sort of a game that we would use to just mess around in D&D. We would have cool encounters, and we would see how much money we could make and what evil deeds we could get up to. Now, there's a lot of discussion, particularly now with the advent of lots of discussions happening about D&D online, whereas how is it a good idea to have an evil campaign? Is it just going to turn into a murder fest? Is it just going to be people doing as many inappropriate and horrible things as possible? Basically, yeah. The name The Scourge was originally given to 5 members of a mercenary team that would operate throughout Main Realm. These were a collection of powerful individuals that would work together to undergo the contracts that most decent adventurers would never dream of taking. Now, the only 2 characters of note are Aviserys and Israfil. The other 3 essentially were killed off right at the very beginning of our first session of these characters. And they were killed off by a very powerful and very famous entity within the world of Dungeons and Dragons. The 3 other members of the Scourge were slain by Tiamat, the mother of all dragons. They had been slain in an encounter where essentially the Scourge had been hired to steal some of the dragon goddess's power. And it didn't go very well at all. Only Aviserys and Israfil escaped with their lives. And from that point, they decided that they were just going to go about continuing the legacy of the Scourge, but only with those 2. So they became this evil double act that would operate within the civilized realms of Main Realm. And often it would be under some disguise or subterfuge. They didn't like to draw too much attention to themselves at first, but that began to change. Now, I'm probably going to record an entire video about the adventures of the Scourge, because it's a different story to the, what we've been discussing so far with Valdane and Theodrex and Droskor and that bunch of characters. But those stories do cross over every now and then. So what I'll do is, I'm going to talk about the time when the Scourge first became a problem for the good characters in our, main campaign. And then in the future, I think I'm going to record a separate video about the full adventures of the evil campaign, because it's pretty funny what they do. They kill and eat halflings, they fight gods, they directly speak with deities to challenge them, to send them the deities' champions so they can fight them and kill them and steal their power. Essentially, the Scourge is a story about how 2 low-level, horrible murderers became 2 of the most powerful and evil entities in all of our setting. But like I said, eventually these paths cross, the evil campaign and the good campaign. Now, I know what you're thinking. If we're playing the same characters and the same people are playing the same characters, how are we going to do that? How is there going to be a confrontation? Well, there wasn't a confrontation between the good and evil characters in this story, because essentially, when we got to this point in the good campaign, we had to wait until we played the evil campaign again to see why the city was deserted and why it was the Scourge that were responsible. So, we start a session of evil D&D. Dom comes round, grabs his character sheet of Israfil. I put down Valdane, pick up Aviserys, the Duskblade, and an evil session begins. And the Scourge have been hired by a mysterious individual who goes by no name. He says he is a disciple of the 8th layer of hell, a disciple of Mephistopheles, and for a hefty prize of gold and magical items and anything else the Scourge can find within its walls, for a hefty prize, they must clear out the city of Agistel. And they can decide how they want to do it themselves. They just need everyone in the city gone. So, me and Dom begin rubbing our hands together, because this is exactly the kind of thing that we enjoy with the evil campaigns. Whereas the good campaign, it's more about us using diplomacy and trying to do the right thing some of the time. The Scourge is all about just being opportunistic. And we see an opportunity here. We can earn the riches of an entire capital city, like a kingdom, if we play our cards right. Instantly, upon arrival in the city, the Scourge make their presence known. Aviserus stands as an incredibly tall, warrior-esque figure. He kind of looks like a mixture of Nightmare from Soul Calibur and Siegfried from Soul Calibur. There's at one point when those two characters merged. It's like long hair, but he looks like he's got like terrifying glowing red eyes at this point, and as a Duskblade he can channel spells through his great sword to great effect. Pun intended. Israfil is a more slight individual. He is more of a dexterity-based warrior. He fights with a sword in one hand and an axe in the other. And as a blackguard, he can call upon an evil god. I can't remember. I think it might have been Vecna, actually. Yes, it was. It was Vecna. He was devoted to Vecna, and thus he was a blackguard of many secrets and many dark purposes in his own right. The two guards standing vigil at the gate of the main keep of Agistel are watching Aviserus and Israfil approach. They are both in full armor, long flowing cloaks. They suppress some of their powers so their eyes are no longer glowing. And Aviserus is the first to speak. And he says, "You there, guard. We would have you deliver us to the council of Agistel. There is much we need to discuss with them." And the guards just look to each other. And they are uneasy. At this point, these characters have grown in power to the point that they have their own kind of aura, almost. So everyone feels a little bit uneasy around these people, and they can't fully tell why. "Who are you?" says the man, the guard at the gate. "Who we are to you is of little consequence. You will take us there immediately." The guard says, "None are permitted through at this time." "Is that so?" Israel looks across to Aviserus and gives a nod, this blackguard, and he basically looks into the guard's soul and learns secrets that this man would like to keep hidden. And he whispers these secrets about this guard's nighttime activities and what this man pays for in the brothels of this place. Information that this guard wouldn't want to be made public anyway. So the guard, with a nod, just lets them through. And then Aviserus and Israfil find themselves walking through the keep, swinging open the door of the vast council chambers to find that the council of Agistel is actually in session. "Who are you?" they yell as these two strangers walk in full armor and like armed as well. "We are the Scourge," says Aviserus, "and we have come here to bring warning of a terrible fate that will befall your city if you do not listen to us." "What fate?" the council ask. "A great beast is on its way here. Its power is insurmountable, an indestructible force that has risen from a great slumber and now means to lay waste to everything that lives within this land." This is a bluff check. The Scourge, both of them, are incredibly adept at lying. As a blackguard, Israfil has high charisma, and as a Duskblade, I believe his spellcasting ability came from charisma, like the sorcerer. So they're both very, very good. They have the gift of the gab. They're very, very convincing. So they start spinning this absolute fabrication that a terrifying monster is on its way to the city. And this was literally the first thing that me and Dom came up with as a strategy. We just enjoyed messing with NPCs. We just enjoyed toying with people. That was what we got out of the evil campaigns, because you have all these powers in D&D, and a lot of the time, you're focusing those on like a collective goal, and like you want to be, in some cases you want to be the heroes, but in this case we're just using all the powers for the wrong reasons. What beast do you speak of? The council ask. It is known by many names, Israfil continues from Eviscerus. It is known in these parts as the Tarask. The council is silent. The Tarask, one of them says. Impossible. It is a legend, a story to keep children in their beds when the sun goes down. It is no story. We have seen this creature with our own eyes, and we assure you, it is coming. With fairly successful bluff checks, the council are all but convinced. All but one. The eldest member, with a long flowing beard and a bald head, steps forth and he says, "Do you have any proof of this? Have you any proof to say that this creature is on its way?" The Black Guard looks deep into this man's eyes, thinking about whether he should find a secret about this man too. But he decides not to. Israfil smiles and says, "You don't have to believe us. We are merely doing this out of the kindness of our own hearts. We do not seek reward. We merely wish to advise you that it would be best to evacuate the city." Evacuate the city? Even if such a beast was in existence and did attack the city, we would defend our walls to the last. Then you would all die, Eviscerus continues. Every single one of you dead. Nothing can stop this beast. Not walls, not artillery, not magic, nothing. And this sends a wave of panic through the council, who start chattering amongst themselves as to how they're going to deal with this creature, this false creature that the Scourge are lying about. There is no Tarask. The Tarask isn't on its way. They basically just want to get everyone out of the city. "Well, we'll need to confirm these reports," one of the council members says. And Eviscerus and Israfil just look to each other. There is a saying that became popular in the Evil campaign. The saying was, never bore the Scourge, because the moment you bore them, that's the moment they draw their weapons and start hacking everyone to pieces. And at this point, they were starting to get bored with this deception. We didn't have much of a plan ever as the Scourge. We just sort of went along with what we thought would be the best idea and kind of improvised our way around it. And we saw that this Tarask lie was rapidly coming to a conclusion. So Israfil decided to use one of his party tricks. This is a technique he developed. Israfil, the Black Guard, he had a couple of levels of rogue, I believe, or something like that. It was something that gave him the equivalent sneak attack damage, I believe, if he caught his opponents flat-footed. Flat-footed as we're, still playing 3.5. And what he would do, he would use his bluff check again, really good charisma, like I say, and he would approach saying these exact words. Guys, come on now, listen. And he'd approach with his hands up, as if seeming like he's friendly, he's unarmed. Let's discuss this. This is what this gesture speaks to most people. Guys, let's discuss this. And he'd approach very cautiously and slowly towards the individuals that he's hoping to convince. And then immediately summons his weapons into his hands out of nowhere. His weapons are spectral and can appear in his grasp like that. Doom! And instantly just slices the head of one of the council members. Eviscerus knows that this is going to happen. It's like a practice maneuver. They give themselves, they give each other a look and they know, let's just kill these guys. That is the mentality of this campaign. We're bored of this interaction. Let's just kill them. Eviscerus draws his massive greatsword and channels burning grass onto the blade, so the blade erupts into flame and he just slices through another council member who falls screaming to the ground. Israfil sort of is able to... He does shadow step behind another individual and impales him with his sword. Eviscerus, this is a trademark move that he would always use. He could also channel Vampiric Touch into his blade, which, if you don't know, is a wizard and a sorcerer spell, which means that if you grab your opponent, you can drain temporary hit points from your foe. Now, imagine a tank of a warrior channeling that through his sword. So every time he's hitting an enemy and they're failing the save, he's getting more and more health. The more people Viserys kills, the stronger he gets. Like, we really built these characters to be, like, we min-maxed them. We power gamed these two because we wanted these evil beings to be indestructible, or as close as indestructible as we can make it for their level, which is about 15 at this point, I believe. And they're just slaying the council members, just cutting them down left and right, and within a few moments they're done. And it is only once all of the council members are dead that the Scourge have to rethink their plans slightly. If this plan is going to succeed, says Viserys, we're going to need to use a different tactic. Israfil smiles. Shall we look in the bag of holding? Yes, says Viserys. Let's look in the bag of holding. Now remember, these two have undergone many a quest, and because they're evil, they just take what they want. So they have accumulated quite a lot of rather valuable loot in their quests against gods and men alike. So they look in the bag of holding. They see they've got an orb of scrying. They have an orb of storms. What else could we use? Oh, I know. Israfil pulls out an epic rod of illusion. We can make all of the city think that the Tarask is outside their gates using this. That's a good idea, says Viserys. We can use a storm. We can put on an entire spectacle to convince the city that the Tarask is approaching and everyone needs to evacuate. And that's exactly what they do. We cut to a couple of hours later, and Viserys and Israfil stand upon the outer walls of Adgerstel, and lightning is arcing across the sky thanks to their orb of storms. Thunder rolls, and Israfil uses the rod of epic illusion to conjure this image of the fabled Tarask, one of the most famous monsters in the D&D lore. This colossal beast is just making its way slowly towards the city, and they both stand upon the walls, thunder and lightning arcing behind them, and they say, "Behold! Behold the Tarask! It is here! Flee! Flee for your lives!" And the people panic. There's uproar immediately. They're like, "Oh my god!" They're looking out off into the distance and seeing this colossal creature. It is almost impossible to behold. Like, it's impossible for the mind to actually understand that there's such a being in existence. And not only that, it's coming this way. Viserys yells, "Flee! Everyone must flee the city! Run whilst you still can!" Israfil basically says, "To the gates! To the gates!" And lots of people are listening to them. Lots of people instantly believe, yeah, absolutely, like, there's a giant monster on its way, we need to run. So there's this mass panic. People are being trampled, people are like looting, seizing what they can. Adgerstel just collapses into chaos within the course of a couple of hours. People just rushing out of the gates of the city, some travelling east, some trying to push north. Not many go south because that's basically where the sea is. So there's just a mass exodus from the city. But something that the Scourge did not take into account was the hardy nature of the knights and the town watch, the city watch as well, that are prepared to stand and defend their city. Not everyone goes. Those who are martially inclined get ready for a fight. And it isn't we didn't really expect that to happen. We thought that this was, they would evacuate with everyone else, but no, they decide, the City Watch and the Knights of Adgerstel decide that they're going to stand for their city, if not to defend the city, to at least give the civilians a chance to escape, to delay the Tarask. which of course isn't real, and is only going to be there for a certain amount of time. Eventually the illusion will dissipate, and that will be a bit problematic. So before that happens, in the chaos, in the confusion, Viserys and Israfil go to the lower levels of the city and just start attacking like squads of guards. Just to add to the chaos and the panic, like they start just hacking into people, like, and then dashing off into the darkness. So then when more guards arrive, they see that something else is happening in the city, but they don't know what. And then those guards get attacked by the Scourge. Remember, Viserys is just getting more and more health the more people he kills, just hacking through people. Israfil teleporting behind people, slitting their throats, kicking them off the walls and stuff. It is just absolutely nightmarishly chaotic. This is essentially the fun that we have with the Scourge. Pure pandemonium, pure chaos. At this stage it becomes a guerrilla combat scenario where the Scourge are just wiping out all that remains of the defense of Agistel. These are very powerful PCs at this point, and they also have a wealth of magical items at their disposal as well. They make use of a portable hole by luring an entire patrol after them down an alleyway. They rush around a corner, lay down the portable hole, and they all just charge into the portable hole, and then they pick it up and put it away so they can slaughter those guards at a later date. And we're just having all sorts of fun just dispatching the remaining town militia in whatever malicious ways that we can think of. But eventually it's getting to the point where even the Scourge are like, wow, there's quite... we're getting a bit tired of all this killing, which is very rare for them to say. There's quite a lot of people to get through, and soon, you know, the illusion's going to stop, and then we're going to have to think of a new way of getting rid of the rest of the people in the city. So they devise a plan. They're going to find the knight captain of the entirety of the city, who command now rests with. And they do so. They are able to hunt down the particular patrol that the knight captain is. He's basically like going to the walls and like ordering artillery to begin firing at the illusion. And it is then that particular squad of guards using the artillery notice that all artillery fire just passes through the terrace as it gets closer and closer to the wall. And they realise they've been duped. But as they realise this, Viserys seizes the knight captain and like throws him to the ground, and they just kill all of his surrounding knights and guards so that it's just him. And Israfel looks into the man's eyes to discover his truth by the power of Vecna. And he essentially, they look to this knight captain and say, the civilians that flee the city, do you have family amongst them? And Israfel looks deep into the man's soul, and indeed he does. He doesn't have to answer. You can just tell whether he's hiding this as a secret or not. If you do not order the full retreat of the rest of your forces, we will focus our attention on the fleeing people of this city, and every single one of them will die. You can't stop us. Order the retreat. And it's like an intimidation roll, and it succeeds. The knight captain basically rushes to this signaling horn, blows the horn, which basically means retreat. And through intimidation, we finally manage to make the rest of the guard and the knightly orders that dwell in Agistel to retreat, to fall back, because the order has been given by their commander. And the commander goes to leave, and we say, no. You can't go. If you go, then everyone will know. Everyone will know the Tarrasque is an illusion, and everyone will know that it was us that threatened you to call the order for the retreat. Well, what does that mean? The knight commander says. Viserys' great sword just goes straight through his chest, and we just kill him. This is the thing about evil campaigns. You can just kill people. Kill him. Dead. Done. Problem solved. The city of Agistel has been entirely routed of civilians and guards and knights and the like. Now it is completely open for the Scourge to take what they wish, as was promised to them by the stranger that gave them this contract. At the mention of this stranger, there he is, standing in the snow that now falls upon the bodies of many of the fallen. And it is only then that Mike describes what this stranger looked like. At the beginning, he was like, oh, it's just this an unnamed individual who represents some kind of cult or order that's behind the 8th gate opening, perhaps, is there. Didn't really describe what he looked like. But now he does, and describes this tall individual with slick black hair, with a black goatee, and cropped, well-fitted robes, a sorcerer. The individual that had hired the Scourge was Daxner, the rival of Valdane. And now, essentially, it is revealed to us, not our characters, that Daxner has the Scourge as backup. At least that's what we initially thought. But now the Scourge have got what they want. They're not really interested in hanging around. Daxner says, you should join me. We would be more than a match for Valdane and his Hexblade friend. We could destroy them. And the Scourge are like, quite rightly so, we don't know who these people are. We don't care. We wanted the riches and the wealth of this city, and we have done that. Thank you for the opportunity. We'll be leaving. Daxner says, no, you can't go. No, you can't. No, I was going to ask you to help. We don't help anyone but ourselves, Aviserys says. And if you're not careful, sorcerer, you will join the dead in the snow. So Daxner's just standing there, realising that he might have got himself in over his head by involving the Scourge. And luckily for him, they depart. They gather as much wealth and loot as they can fling into their bag of holding. They raid the vaults of Agistel, getting a vast amount of gold that they intend to put towards building an army. This is one of their side projects that they've been working on, which I'll go into in the video that I make about the Scourge. But essentially they become very moneyed due to the sack of Agistel. They become incredibly rich. And they depart with no further interaction with Daxner whatsoever. It is then that Mike describes what Daxner does. He realises he has to prepare for the arrival of Valdane and this Hexblade friend of his now. So he descends deep into the vaults, past even further than where the Scourge went to get their riches, and he discovers what he's been looking for this entire time. A colossal gateway that leads into the lower sections of the keep of Agistel, the catacombs, and it is there that he lies in wait for our heroes. And then we return back to where we were. We return back to the good campaign where Valdane and Barnaby had arrived to see the city deserted. But now they notice that beneath the snow that there are a lot of bodies that have been covered by the snowfall. It seems that the orb of storms that Aviserys had been using had caused a great shift in weather, so even the snowy region of Ireland that Agistel is in has just become blizzard-like, covering bodies and stuff. And this old man, who is shakingly recounting what has happened, finishes the tale. So that session of the Scourge was essentially being told by the old man who was telling Valdane and Barnaby what had happened in the city. And now that leaves us with what Valdane and Barnaby are going to do to stop Daxner. They don't know that Daxner is down there yet, but we as our characters knew. But we had to not metagame, which is a good thing. Never metagame, and thus the challenge now awaits is to find out exactly what Daxner is doing and what is his involvement with this 8th gate. What is, like, you know, what's going to happen? Obviously it's going to open, but what is Daxner's endgame? Why does he want that to open? You will discover this and more in the next exciting edition of D&D Stories. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as ever, and always, keep gaming.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the D&D Stories Facebook, Patreon, and t-shirts on Redbubble. Keep gaming!